Welcome back to the Fandom Zone podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back at the Fandom Zone, ready to talk more of The Boys Season 2 with my wonderful co-host and man who I'm trying really hard to make smile right now, DJ Nick. How you doing, Nick?
Hey, Charles, I'm doing very, very well. You know what? Mission accomplished, because, the folks didn't get to hear our off-air chatter there, but you had me in stitches. So, it's definitely not hard for you to make me smile. I'm doing good. It's the world is changing. What can I say? And maybe to quote Mr. Bob Dylan, the times they are a-changing.
Yeah, for some strange reason, things here in the United States, they seem a little brighter all of a sudden. I don't know what it was. Things were a little bleak last week, as we talked about, but, suddenly here a couple days ago, we got some great news that actually took place on my mom's birthday, which I thought was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we've got a new president, everyone, in the United States. How great is that, right? We got a little applause there.
Yes, so definitely congratulations to President-elect Joe Biden and, of course, his Vice President Kamala Harris, for sure.
Yes, so fingers crossed that hopefully democracy was saved just in the DJ nick of time, I guess.
I see what you did there.
See what I did there. All right. We won't get too deep in the political woods, don't worry.
No.
So here at episode 194, getting ever closer to 200.
Wow.
Yeah, we're going to be talking Nothing Like It in the World. The fourth episode of The Boys Season 2 aired on September 11th, 2020. This episode was written by Michael Saltzman, who is new to The Boys, but this was directed by Fred Toye, who directed the Season 1 episode, The Female of the Species,
Ooh.
and most notably directed the final episode of Watchmen, the HBO series. So he directed the episode See How They Fly, and that was a superb episode. He's also directed episodes of Westworld, Fringe, and Alias, which is a show I'm a particular fan of. So I thought that was great. And obviously we've got a lot to talk about in this one. Once again, have some trivia that I thought we could mention before we get into our four topics today.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're wondering about the title, Nothing Like It in the World, that actually comes from The Boys issues number 35 and 36. And in that two-part story, this is where Mother's Milk finally tells Huey about his upbringing in Harlem, the secret of his massive strength, the catastrophe that struck his family, and the unforgettable boxing championship disaster that led to him joining the Boys. So hopefully at some point we will get this story, because if you kind of notice so far in Season 1 and Season 2, we don't know all that much about Mother's Milk.
No, we don't really have much of a backstory for it. It's
so
true.
It is there. It has been established, but we haven't gotten into it yet. So I don't know if they're trying to save this for a particular moment, but if you're kind of curious a little bit about Mother's Milk's background, you might want to check out these two issues. That maybe download the digital comics and give these a look if you're kind of curious, because it is very interesting where Mother's Milk gets his name from. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, I'm definitely very curious myself, Charles. That's why I'm just waiting for these comics to arrive at my doorstep, because, since starting this podcast with you, I'm like, when is the mailman going to get here? Because I've been waiting for my comics. Hopefully this week they should be arriving, so I'm really excited.
Well, hopefully soon, yes. Hopefully you'll get them, and that way you can enjoy the nice week because Italy's under lockdown, as you've mentioned to me before.
Correct.
So what better time, right?
Exactly. Dive into some new comics.
Stuck inside anyway, you might as well dig into some comics you haven't read and enjoy them. All right. Also, the interviews in this episode where we saw people describing stories of love, that were being discussed at the beginning of the episode, and these were kind of interspersed between the story of Huey and Starlight.
Yeah.
If you notice closely, if you're a fan of the movie When Harry Met Sally, you kind of notice that they kind of borrowed directly from that. And of course, When Harry Met Sally, stars, of course, as we talked about here in the podcast, Meg Ryan, the mother of Jack Quaid, who plays Huey Campbell on The Boys.
I definitely saw it myself. I mean, I have not seen When Harry Met Sally for a long time, Charles, but it's still very much ingrained in my mind. And yeah, I could definitely see what you're saying with those kind of juxtaposing those scenes of the interviews and that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, obviously, I'm not that big of a fan of Meg Ryan's film career, but I kind of wonder now that they've done this a couple times if there's going to be more nods to Meg Ryan movies in the future on The Boys.
I would not be surprised because it has happened before. It's happened here. We actually mentioned it in previous episodes as well, so it would not surprise me.
So for anybody partaking of adult beverages while you watch The Boys, this might be a nice little drinking game you could add about whether they bring up Meg Ryan movie, and if so, then you have to chug a beer or something.
Yeah, you could do that with that or with the Billy Joel songs. All the references to Billy Joel.
Of which there are more in this episode.
Yep.
Yeah, because in this episode, since you brought it up, we get a pretty big nod to, of all songs, We Didn't Start the Fire in this rather hilarious moment, which obviously we're going to talk about, with Mother's Milk driving the car and Huey and Annie riding in the car and singing along rather loudly to We Didn't Start the Fire on the radio. That should be a lot of fun to talk about. It was a pretty fun little moment as far as I'm concerned. Also, in this episode, we kind of had the characters Homelander and Doppelganger watching Taxi Driver.
Yep.
So for anybody not familiar with the movie Taxi Driver, wondering why this movie was referenced, it's a 1976 American psychological thriller drama directed by Martin Scorsese, starring, of course, Robert De Niro, Jodie Foster, Sybil Shepherd, Harvey Keitel, Peter Boyle, and Albert Brooks. And in this film, it's set in a decaying and morally bankrupt New York City following the Vietnam War, which tells the story of Travis Bickle, that's De Niro's character, a lonely taxi driver who descends into insanity as he plots to assassinate both the presidential candidate for whom the woman he's infatuated with works, and also the pimp of an underage prostitute he is a friend of.
And I would definitely add to that briefly, Charles, any fans of the film Joker have to watch Taxi Driver, because I'm sure that was one of the films that the director borrowed from, along with The Showman, which is another fantastic film. But definitely fans of Joker, check out Taxi Driver if you're fans of that genre.
I would second that recommendation because having seen both films, yes, I can definitely attest that Joker gives more than a healthy nod to Scorsese's Taxi Driver.
Very much so.
Very, very similar in tone, shall we say. All right, 4 topics today. So topic number 1, let's talk about Billy Butcher, and we can talk a little bit about Grace Mallory, who he meets up with for a little bit, and we can also talk about Becca and Ryan, because at long last, Butcher gets reunited with Becca and has some unsettling thoughts about her son Ryan in the process.
Yeah.
Which does not go over too well with Becca.
And may I also say that at least you finally get some backseat loving as well, which I think he probably needed. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Steaming up those car windows in the backseat. Yeah. Doing the Titanic move.
Yeah. That's when Meatloaf's Paradise by the Dashboard Light started to play in my head.
Yeah, pretty much. That's kind of like the definitive backseat romance.
Yes.
Song playing on the car radio, I would say. Yeah. Especially when they start doing the baseball references.
Yes.
He's coming for home. Holy cow, I think he's going to make it. Stop right there.
You have to love Meatloaf. Big shout out to Meatloaf.
Well, you don't have to love Meatloaf, the person, but you can love Meatloaf.
Yeah, I love Meatloaf the musician.
The musician, yeah, the song, yes. Meatloaf the person is apparently not that great of a person.
No, I will agree. I will agree. But hey, Bat Out of Hell still regularly plays on my CD player.
Yeah, so if you're a fan, that's cool. They did some great music back in the day, so I got nothing against that. Let's get your thoughts, Nick. What did you make of Butcher's reunion with Becca? Or do you want to talk about Grace first before we get into Becca?
Well, I think
there's not that much to talk about Grace, but
no, I think it's the reunion between Becca and Butcher was obviously one of the key moments in this episode because, of course, it's all been kind of steaming up to this moment of him finally reuniting with her, and everybody thinks he's on a fool's errand because even Mother's Milk is like, you're never going to be able to do this by yourself. What the heck is going on? Are you crazy? You're going to get killed. You're never going to be able to do this. And it's wonderful, though, that he finally gets to see her. And, of course, they have that romantic moment and what have you. And, I've never seen Butcher so happy because you can see he's just genuinely happy. Before, of course, they get into the whole sex scene in the car. You can just see that he's like, I've rescued the princess, so I'm on my way to rescuing the princess. It's kind of his hero's moment. So I felt so happy for Billy in that particular case. When they get to discussing Ryan, I possibly one has to kind of watch one's words. I mean, you're talking about your girlfriend's son,
right?
And let's say that he exactly does not choose his words appropriately. Yes. Talk about killing the moment.
Yeah, Butcher is really great at not being able to read the room, if you've noticed.
Right.
Yeah, although, you brought up a great point earlier that it was a very different side that we got to see to Butcher. When he's, reunited with Becca, you could see the chemistry. They still feel for one another. She kind of makes a comment that she still considers herself his wife, even after everything that's happened. And she still has feelings for him, probably more so because now she's so desperate to find a way out of her predicament. Yeah. But she's also very worried about her son, and seeing that, because up until now we haven't, all we've seen is just the hard-ass, determined Butcher, the vengeful Butcher, the angry Butcher. So to see him with Becca, it's like seeing him with a completely different person. It's like she's the one who can tame the beast and bring him back to some semblance of humanity almost. So obviously, this is something that's been driving him ever since he had that brief encounter with her at the end of season 1, and then only to lose her again. So this is a huge moment for him, but during the course of their reunion, like you mentioned, he steps right into it, because he has these biases, this bigotry towards superheroes so much.
That's right.
That it definitely clouds his reasoning, and because he's so ingrained in this hatred towards superheroes, that he unleashes it a little bit without even realizing it on Ryan. And, obviously Becca is just horribly appalled by this, just like, look, this is my son you're talking about, and you're calling him a soup freak.
It goes to show you, I think, how hatred can be toxic.
Yeah.
Because the fact that you put everybody in one group just because one person or a group of people are bad, it doesn't mean that everybody is bad. It's kind of like, to use a real world reference, it reminds me a little bit of Islamophobia. As in, every single Muslim is bad. That is not true. But there will be people, or even anti-Semites. Every single Jew is a bad Jew. Same thing. It's putting people all in one group and saying everybody they're part of this group are evil, and that's exactly what Butcher is doing here. He's letting his hatred, become toxic and cloud his judgment.
Yeah, I mean, it's disturbing to realize, and this is probably one of the first real glimpses we get of this, of how ingrained that hatred is, to the point where it's overriding his common sense. And it's affecting, here he is. he's finally gotten what he wants, and he still sabotages himself because of his prejudices against people like Ryan.
That's right. Yeah.
And so Becca, meanwhile, admits to Butcher that she went to Vought when she found out she was pregnant, not to Butcher because she knew how he would react. And he would just go on this rampage, to get revenge. So she, she knew that he had, harbored these feelings. And so she probably was like more than, desperate and hoping that Ryan would never develop powers like Homelander.
I totally agree. And it also shows you in this episode how much women read situations better than men, because we will also get with Starlight as well.
That goes without saying, right?
Yeah. And Starlight also kind of pointing out Mother Milk being OCD and Huey not even noticing it. It shows you that women tend to have that seventh sense, that us men tend to miss these little things. And I might be stating the obvious here, Charles, but I think the interesting thing about this episode is we get 3 key moments of, shall we say, post-coital commentaries.
Yes.
Where you have, of course, Becca and Butcher. You have Homelander and Doppelganger.
Right.
And then it's
Huey and Annie in this episode.
Yeah. And also, I suppose you could throw in Frenchie and his girlfriend as well.
Sherry,
they are all they're all looking almost for judgment, but it's like you have sex and then you have pillow talk of what is my next move, and it seems to be the theme going on through this episode is you meet up with somebody you trust, you sleep with them, and then you probably talk about what do I do now. That seems to be the question that all these guys pose to, their, shall we say, their sex buddy, if you will.
Yeah. Well, and also it's the women telling the men, "You're being an idiot."
Yeah, with the only exception, of course, of Doppelganger, who if he told Homelander he was an idiot, but he dies anyway. But yeah.
Well, Doppelganger presumably is a male anyway, so just his relationship with it, is more prostitutional, shall we say?
Yes, exactly.
So in that regard, as we find out, so Butcher talks with Grace before going off on his mission to find Becca, and Grace gives Butcher a folder of Liberty. Interestingly enough. Who was this soup from the 1970s who was all over Rayner's server, as we find out.
Yeah.
And apparently there was an address in Liberty in North Carolina, so Billy tells Grace that they'll see what they can find out. So, so this is what really starts the investigation into Liberty, as we find out.
Yeah, because off we go to Raleigh.
Well, off we go to Raleigh. So I just thought I'd mention that because I thought it was a kind of an important plot point.
Oh, it is.
But yeah, primarily this is obviously Butcher, Becca, and Ryan, and it's Butcher toward the end of this episode. He's not able to stay with Becca and Ryan. He has to leave. So
because he wants to take them with him, but Becca knows that it's just not doable at this point because they'd be hunted down constantly, and she's like, because there's obviously the shadow of Homelander looms incredibly large. She's like, if we ran away with you, he'd find us.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that she and Ryan are being kept in this compound by Vought.
Yes, they happen to just be missing. It's like I don't think it'd go unnoticed for long.
It's obviously being surveilled, and yeah, exactly. So somebody's going to find out, even if Homelander doesn't see them. The security footage or someone else, in this case Black Noir, as we find out, has been watching Butcher scale that fence. So
he already knows.
So eventually word will get out. Yeah. So we'll see how that plays out in future episodes. All right. Anything else about Butcher, Grace, Becca, or Ryan?
I think this just really sort of sows the seeds also for, even though we didn't actually get to see Ryan, physically, it was interesting how you could actually feel him in this episode because the way they were talking about him.
Yeah.
Because you can almost feel him being part of the picture. But yeah, it obviously will lead into other things as we move forward. And I just was so happy for Butcher until he kind of put his foot in it.
Yeah. He does have a way of doing that, doesn't he? Just when you think, okay, he's finally on track, Butcher sabotages himself. Like I said, he self-sabotages, and all those hopes just kind of fade away, and we get the hard-nosed Butcher once again. He falls so quickly back into that role, and I don't even think he realizes he's doing that at this point.
No, it's just almost like a light switch. It just is.
Yeah.
It's just almost that automatic that, as you said, he doesn't realize that he's doing it.
Yeah, I think it's just there's so much anger and hate inside him that it just overrides his judgment.
Yeah.
All right.
That's the big problem.
Yep. Topic number 2, as we continue to psychoanalyze the boys members, let's talk about Homelander and Doppelganger.
Yeah.
So this should be a fun topic, right, everybody? If you've watched the episode. So Homelander, we haven't really got to this point yet when talking about it, but essentially he gets very upset watching Stormfront at a rally and on television.
Yeah, he just gets furious.
He gets furious, so he flies off to this cabin in the woods. And he goes inside, and who is there but none other than Elisabeth Shue, once again as Madelyn Stillwell. And our initial reaction is like, wait, what? I thought she was dead.
Of course, yeah, that was my exact reaction. I was like, did he actually kill somebody else? Or, I mean, it's like, at first I actually thought it might have been a flashback that maybe they hadn't kind of shown us. Like, it might be. So that's, I remember watching
so you thought it was,
like,
okay, so you thought it was a flashback. Okay.
I thought it might have been, or you know what my other thought was? It could have been like, because I'm a huge fan of Bates Motel. Mm-hmm. I thought it might have been like Norman talking to his mom when she isn't actually there.
Oh, like a ghost, or just a mental,
like
image, hallucination.
Hallucination.
Yeah.
Yeah, or be it Fight Club or what have you.
Those kind of some kind of psychosis going on.
Yeah, where the person is actually not really there and he's just imagining it because even though he killed her, she was the one that she was his go-to in everything. And that's why my initial thought was either it's a flashback or he's playing this in his mind as if she were there. So it's like, as you said, because we know that Homelander kind of has a few problems upstairs. So it would not have surprised me.
Yeah, I was obviously surprised by Elisabeth Shue's return. I was very happy because I thought she did a great job as Madelyn Stillwell in season 1, and I was disappointed they killed her off. But I was, I was trying to piece this together. I was like, okay, so did Homelander actually save her before Butcher blew the building, or just that he pretend to kill her? Or whatever, and
or did she have a double?
Or exactly. Was it a clone or something? I was trying to come up with all the comic book explanations for this, right?
Yes.
So like, okay, was it like alternate universe or clone or fill in the blank, someone disguised, or as it turns out though, it's a shapeshifter.
That's right.
And but so. Madelyn, and I use the air quotes here, Madelyn, with laser beams on her freaking head, greets him and tells him that she's missed him and offers him a nice glass of milk.
Yes, she does.
As Dick just hangs his head in just embarrassment and shame.
Yeah, because when I rewatched this, I'd forgotten that moment where she's like, how about some milk? And he's dipping his fingers in it. And I'm, once again, you came to mind like, yes, I know we're going to be talking about this because now I have this, this phobia of milk.
So good. Yeah.
I'm like, when are they going to drop the lactation thing already? I'm done with this now.
Yeah, as we've talked about in previous episodes, Nick has a little bit of a issue with the constant breast milk references.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But in this episode, no exception.
Of course not, because what does she offers him a glass of milk from the get-go. It's like, okay.
Yeah, so Homelander kisses her, and again, I'm using the air quotes here, her, and she kisses him back, and we think everything's, still trying to piece together what's going on. Why is she, still alive after presumably being killed? They kind of kick back. They start watching Taxi Driver. Homelander kind of complains that he's kind of griping that, Stormfront killed Kenji instead of him.
Yeah, that she stole his thunder and everything else.
So it's kind of like, well, honey, how was your day? And he's griping about his day. And he talks about how he feels the 7 are just weak links. And Stillwell's being all comforting. And Homelander says, well, well, Madelyn, you wouldn't put up with all this.
Mm-hmm.
And she tells him that, the 7's your team, and they've got to respect you. And otherwise it might be time to, quote, tear out the weeds, unquote, and start all over again. So at this point, were you at all suspicious about who this was or what was going on?
That's why, as I said, my headcanon went to, as I said, the Bates Motel situation. Because I have to say, folks, if you've not watched it, check it out, because Bates Motel is a fantastic, fantastic show. If you're fans of Psycho
yeah.
and such. But that's where my head went to, because I remember even in Bates Motel, you had these scenes that seemed so real between Norma and Norman, where you actually thought that she was actually there. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was just like almost his ego, or should we say his psyche, almost having a chat with himself, saying, what do I do? As one might, I suppose, do. So that was my thought. And obviously we get that moment where we cut away because she kind of like seems to have having the rumbly tummies or something.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, oh, I'm turning back. And then we see it's Doppelganger.
Yeah. And you're like,
oh.
And then you're like, oh, and then you're like, oh.
Yeah. Yes.
Once you realize what was really going on here. So, yeah, apparently Doppelganger couldn't hold his shape for too long. And Homelander gets mad at this point. He's like, you change back.
Change back. Yeah.
And so Doppelganger does so. And then, Doppelganger has Homelander put his head back in her lap. But Homelander is really hesitant about this at this point because the whole illusion is being, destroyed here because of
the spell's been broken.
Yeah, so it's like he's out of the mood now. But she keeps telling him, oh, I love you, and you're the most powerful man in the whole world, and there's nothing you can't do, trying to play up to his ego. So essentially what's been revealed there is that, apparently it's just like that Homelander has, because of Madelyn not being around and him still being hung up on her, and still having that breast milk fixation, that apparently he's presumably paying Doppelganger to do this, to prostitute himself like this.
Or possibly just threatening him, because let's be honest, Homelander could probably just bully him into it, saying, either you do this or I'll kill you.
This is true. He probably saves a lot of money that way, just by intimidation alone. So after he leaves for a while, he comes back, and at the very end of the episode, and here's where things start to take a very darker turn, because they kind of go through the whole motions again, where she greets him at the door, and then Doppelganger asks if he would like him to be someone else. And then Homelander kind of shoves him away and says, no, I don't need anybody but myself. And that gives Doppelganger this idea, well, hey, I'll just shapeshift into Homelander.
Big mistake.
Big mistake. So what was your reaction to seeing Doppelganger become Homelander?
Well, first off, I have to admit I kind of called it at that last meeting because I had a feeling. I said, Homelander's going to be arriving. He's going to be furious. What's he going to do? He's going to kill Doppelganger. And because you could just feel the tension in that moment because he's just angry and because he's just had that confrontation with Stormfront, when he goes back to this cabin. When he turned into Homelander, I have to say it was a little bit odd seeing
you rolled your eyes
Homelander
at it? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody's welcome to wear whatever they're comfortable in. Don't get me wrong, but it was a little bit odd seeing Homelander dressed kind of in that kind of very sort of negligee and such. So it was a little bit odd.
Well, I thought it looked rather fetching on him.
It's a new look.
Yeah, that's true.
But I could see when he's like promising him oral sex and everything else. I said to myself, "You're dead, dude. I know you're dead because you know that Homelander's not going to stand for this." And lo and behold, he grabs him and kills him. But
because he was just thinking that that Homelander would be turned on by the idea of
having sex with
himself. Yeah, but not so much as it turns out. And he's not really down with that, and it's just at this point, like you said, he's coming off of that confrontation with Stormfront. So he's just looking for someone to take all that rage out on. And it's just bad decision making on Doppelganger's part because, well, hey, Homelander tells him he's pathetic, lifts him up by his head, and then says, "I don't need anyone," and then breaks his neck and drops him to the floor. Yeah. And that's the end of the episode. Yeah,
because I think he had to destroy something, and unfortunately,
Doppelganger was that just happened to be the wrong place at the wrong time on that one.
Yeah, yes, because it could either have been a case of angry sex, or if not, he killed him. It was going to be one of those two.
Yeah. So who knows how Homelander's going to find another outlet for his fixation? We'll find out, I guess.
That's right. Yes.
So stay tuned.
Stay tuned, listeners.
Exactly. To be continued. Yeah, we'll find out. All right. Topic number 3, unless you had anything else about this subject.
I just thought it was, once again, it's the boys. Yeah. So expect the unexpected. Yeah, and this was actually very clever.
So you thought this was kind of like the major shock of the episode for this one?
It was a big surprise, of course.
Because the boys does seem to like to go like one big shock per episode, at least.
Yes, because we'd had the exploding whale the previous episode, and here we get this. Charles, I mean, I know it might be a little bit spoiler territory, but does this happen in the comics?
I can't remember.
Okay.
I'm not sure. It might. I can't remember, to be honest with you. It's been a while since I've read through the boys' run, so I'm a little rusty. The show is kind of like bringing back some of the memories, so I probably need to cycle through it again. Maybe we should be both reading this at the same time.
Yes.
And I could go back. Give me an excuse to go back, right?
There you go. No, it was just a curiosity.
Yeah, I just honestly, I couldn't remember offhand, but I'm sure, hey, if our listeners, our wonderful listeners, could write in and tell us, you're more than welcome to, and we'll tell you how to do that at the very end of the episode. So stay tuned.
Right.
All right.
Well played, sir.
Thank you. That's what I try. So, topic number 3, let's continue talking about Homelander, but in this topic, let's talk more about his relationship with the various members of the Seven. So, there's some interesting things going on with, say, A-Train, or Queen Maeve, or Starlight, and of course, Stormfront. So that's 4 things to talk about right there, I think. So, Nick, which topic would you like to tackle first?
Well, this is quite the picnic basket to unpack for sure, Charles. I guess we can kind of, busk it as we go. But when it comes to this, it's true. I think it all stems from Homelander wanting to reassert his power in the Seven because he feels that his power is being questioned, of course, by Stormfront, and so he says to himself, also following the little talk with Doppelganger, it's like, I'm going to reassert my power and show people who's boss, And that's why, obviously, he goes and does all the things that he will do in this episode, i.e. The confrontation with Starlight in the elevator. Granted, okay, he is still very suspicious of her, and he confirms that here. You and I had talked about it in the previous episode, that would Starlight have killed Huey or not? And that's exactly what Homelander confronts her about. It's like, you hesitated. And he gets very, very rough with her about it. But I think it all stems from him just being so furious that the newest member of the Seven, and possibly a woman of all things, is taking his spotlight.
Yes.
And so he's infuriated. And we know that he is a misogynist at the end of the day. And he has very or no respect for women. So we're not surprised with the fact that Stormfront is a woman is just adding insult to injury. And that's why he does what he does.
Yeah. One of the things that we've noticed is that right now, Homelander feels like he's being attacked on all sides. He's under threat from Vought. He's under threat from Stormfront. He's dealing with the whole personal drama of Becca inserting herself between Homelander and his son, Ryan.
And Ryan rejecting him as well.
Ryan rejecting him. Yes, you bring up another great point that we talked about last episode. So he's feeling, he has this need to be in control. So right now, he's not feeling like he's having that control that he's used to. So in this moment in time, he's trying to, like you said, he's exerting his power. He's trying to reassert his control over everyone and therefore get control over his own life. So what does he do? Like, one of the things you talked about, he confronts Starlight in the elevator, said like, well, I only spared your life because Maeve told me to. Said, you failed me when you didn't murder Huey. And I don't like it when you're lying to me. So he just basically intimidating her, letting her know that he's watching her. And then he goes to A-Train, who shows up, and Homelander just directly confronts him and says, look, you're losing your speed. You're having these attacks when you use your speed. So we can't depend on you. So you're out. Sorry about your luck. Bye-bye.
You had a good run, no pun intended.
But yeah, exactly.
But you can see he is so insincere with that talk of his, like, we can always be friends. He's using those so banal phrases that everybody's heard. We're going in a different direction. We'll always be friends.
Yeah.
He's spouting out everything he might have picked up from hearsay of what people say when they let somebody go.
It's that corporate, that corporate dismissiveness when they try to basically just try to placate you as, they're kicking you to the curb.
Yeah, in their eyes, they're letting you down easy when they're not.
Yeah.
But, because as soon as I heard we're going in a different direction, like, yep, here we go. Yep. And the vice president is actually trying to let him down easy. Because she's like, oh, you're doing a wonderful job. And now we've got this whole, what is it, Heroes for Tots.
You talk about Ashley? Yeah.
Yeah, Ashley, exactly. Yeah. And she's like, we're heroes for tots, and you're doing a splendid job. And granted, okay, she is overly kind to him because she never does not get to the point. She just tells him she was basically buttering him. Maybe she was buttering him up before she's like, sorry, dude, we have to let you go. And yeah, and in comes Homelander, who has the emotional reach of a teaspoon, saying, you're done, buddy. We'll always be friends. and he ends with, et cetera, et cetera.
I keep waiting him just to say, you're fired.
Yeah, well, you know what? Well, I mean, doesn't it, and granted, these are my thoughts, and it doesn't necessarily reflect those of the podcast folks, but it does remind me of a certain man who, when he throws a tantrum, fires people at random. I'm just saying.
A certain man who just lost a presidential election? Oh, I think so. I think you might be onto something somewhere. Like someone who has some weird sex fetishes, treats people horribly, and
fires people at random just because he's having a bad day.
Very, very emotionally immature, prone to tantrums. Yeah, I could see a little bit of a similarity there, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Wraps himself up in patriotism. Yeah, I think so. All right. But let's see what else. So yeah, Homelander, another thing that he does, he's giving this interview with Queen Maeve. And he's had some issues with Maeve ever since that airliner incident from season 1, where Maeve tried to basically almost, was feeling guilty about abandoning all those poor people to their fates. And
because reality check, she has a heart.
yeah, exactly. She's not completely, heartless like he is. And as a result, he kind of feels betrayed by her. Yeah. And it's something Maeve mentioned to Elena not too long ago, that Homelander could be very controlling, and that if he found out about Elena, he would be, it'd be very dangerous for her because he feels very possessive.
Not to mention, I'm sure he's probably a homophobe as well.
I'm sure. And so what does Homelander do when it comes to Maeve? Again, he's trying to reassert his control. So what does he do? He outs Maeve on national television. Yeah. Which is, like, big dick move, obviously, because for one, you don't do that.
And Charles, I actually wanted to ask you something, because I'm not too familiar with, people on should we say, national TV. Apparently the host is an actual real host in real life in America.
Maria Menounos. She used to be on Entertainment Tonight here in the United States. Okay. And then she's ended up on some other entertainment programs over the years. But yeah,
she's a person like Ellen DeGeneres, those kind of people.
Kind of, but she's more of an entertainment TV show host type,
okay,
or interviewer, like a TV interviewer. So she's not primarily so much the host of a talk show.
Okay, so she's not Oprah or
Ellen. No. It's just more like someone who covers this celebrity world in the entertainment world, that kind of thing.
So it's like a segment within like a newscast or something like that. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, but someone who would follow the entertainment world. So,
thank you for explaining that to us, us Europeans.
I understand. Yeah. I can imagine that someone in Italy may not be familiar with Maria Menounos, but yeah.
Beautiful lady, mind you. Yeah. I have to say, you guys have such gorgeous women on TV, on newscasts. I will say that.
We do all right here. Italy's nothing to sneeze at either, by any means. So. All right. But yeah, so he just completely outs her, and Maeve is shocked, understandably, by this. And it's this really brutal, passive-aggressive move that he does, because he's so casual about it, just casually mentions it in conversation, this huge bombshell, and Maeve is just kind of like having to, cover up her own awkwardness, reacting to this, and trying not to...
Well, Maria kind of sets him up a little bit, because she's like, she rightfully makes the point of, there's no racial diversity within the Seven. And I was like, oh, funny you should mention that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I have to hand it to Maeve for keeping it together, because you could tell that, she's just so good in that moment, because you can tell she's bothered about it and she's really sort of shocked. Yeah. But you can see that she tries to keep her smile and going.
She tries to be a professional, but yeah.
That's right. It made me think of, to use a musical reference, The Show Must Go On, when they say, inside my heart is breaking, but my smile still stays on. Of course, Show Must Go On by Queen, one of my favorite songs by Queen.
Nicely done, sir.
But that's what I thought of when I saw Maeve doing that, because she's internally struggling, but she keeps her smile going. And man, do I feel bad for Maeve. I really do.
And I want to break out my classic Queen album. Show must go on. Show must
what a wonderful
go
song.
That's it. Yeah. And then lastly, of course, Homelander confronts Stormfront, who's been needling Homelander, questioning his authority, questioning his leadership. So obviously, Homelander's been feeling like she's been trying to undermine him. She calls him out on his constant need to be loved by everyone, and he flashes the heat vision, all Injustice Superman-like, that in that threatening way. And she's like, well, Like, I'm sorry I pushed you too far. I'm just here to help. She takes a completely different tact with him.
I'm actually curious. Do you think that she's generally scared of him, or you think she's just messing him about, even when she?
I think she's gaslighting him totally.
So even when he kind of flashes his eyes at her and she's like kind of seems to get apologetic, you think she's still messing him around?
Yeah, I do. I think she was trying to see how far she could push him, and then just to kind of placate him a little bit, like act like, "Oh, I'm sorry. You're obviously in charge here."
Yeah.
You know, like I'm just, and then she takes a different tact. So it's just more gaslighting on her part, that trying to get him, riled up and question himself, I think, a little bit. So she points out that he needs help connecting with his audience, because she's made comments calling him Gramps and acting like, well, he's so out of touch.
And she should be one to talk, since we find out she's even older than she actually is.
Yep, exactly. So, yeah, she's a little older than she appears, just a bit. Yeah, because we kind of find out, well, hey, this is one of the things obviously we want to talk about when we talk about our fourth topic, but yeah, she's...
I'm sorry, Charles, for skipping ahead.
No, you're fine. I'm flexible. It's cool. But apparently, yeah, she's 70 years old.
I hope I look that good when I'm 70. Seriously.
And we find out later, she was the former superhero Liberty who disappeared. So essentially she's gone away and reinvented herself as Stormfront. So she's acting like, in Homelander, she's not, Homelander obviously isn't aware of this yet. So as far as he's concerned, she's just this young upstart trying to make a name for herself and steal his thunder, so to speak. Stormfront thunder. You can see what I did there?
Nice. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's like, who is this kind of, young little influencer?
Right.
Who's kind of trying to take over my, my show, if
Who's
you
this
will.
punk? Yeah. Punk.
Yeah.
Punk kid.
But what I think is as much as I can't stand the Stormfront character for what she does and what she stands for, I have to hand it to her for like running circles around Homelander, and he doesn't even get it, because that whole thing when she's like kind of faux apologetically saying, "Oh, I'm sorry," kind of thing.
She's playing him totally.
Yeah,
like
she's
fiddle.
like. She's taking the mickey out of you, and you don't even get that she's doing
No,
it.
it's just like, it's that kind of like the meme where you see the point and it flies over Superman's head.
Yeah.
And then Superman's kind of like looking around like, what happened? So yeah, it's she's as we find out more in this episode, she's a master manipulator, and she's playing Homelander like a fiddle, like just knowing exactly how to push his buttons, knowing when to pull back a little bit in this case, and she's obviously intending to use him for a purpose. And
that's right.
And setting him up in such a way that he's going to feel like he's going to have to need her and have to go to her.
That's probably also why, she kind of pulled it back, because she's like, I will need him later on. So I need him, where he's at right now. So obviously I think she is creating that situation of bringing him to desperation, of he feels he's losing his grasp on power and what have you. And it's a perfect opportunity for her. Though, to be honest, when I first saw this episode, I was kind of thinking there might have been a throwdown between the two of them.
Not yet, as it turns out. That
yeah,
because
it's like it's like building and building and building, because you see kind of the way that Homelander looks at her, even when he's just looking at her on TV. Like, oh yeah, he's gonna go and just punch this chick's lights out for sure, because he's furious. And even when, as I said, when they have that moment and he talks to her, I had a feeling he was going to either punch her, or said those eyes were going to be kind of spouting out heat vision or heat rays.
Yep.
It was I was waiting for that, but as you said, to be continued.
Yep, exactly. The tension between those two is so palpable, and we know that Homelander is essentially this ticking time bomb. So you could definitely see that happen. And I think it's a credit to Aya Cash, who plays Stormfront, Because yes,
She's a wonderful actress.
Stormfront is a horrible villain that no one should want to emulate, but Aya Cash plays her so well. And
if you hate her, it means she's doing her job.
Exactly. She's a villain you love to hate. And that's a credit, I think, to Aya Cash.
Is she just as evil and vile in the comics?
Well, like I said, in the comics, Stormfront is a man. He's a man, baby, but not nearly as formidable.
So it's almost like a B-lister in the comics.
Kind of, yeah. Not as much of a threat.
Okay.
I think the TV show kind of developed Stormfront's potential here as a villain.
We're also seeing the current times that we recently went through and stuff, the rise of white supremacism and everything else. It stands to reason.
Yeah. I mean, similar character as far as, beliefs, Nazi-like beliefs. But I think the TV show developed the character more and realized what they really had, as opposed to Garth Ennis.
As I mentioned, it also makes the show current because unfortunately we have seen white supremacism on the rise, both in your country, Charles, and in the world at large.
Unfortunately, yeah, it's everywhere. Unfortunately, that was the one down thing about our presidential election was realizing that just under half of our country is horribly racist and supports that racism. Even if they don't act like racist, they support it. In the form of Donald Trump.
Correct. So it obviously makes the show timely.
Yeah.
For that reason.
Yeah. So it is very relevant to what's going on today, unfortunately. But sometimes these things are good, to explore that, to get people more aware of this, of the true threat that we're all facing right now. As a global society.
It's through media of this nature, I think that's the best way to speak out without being over the top or too much on the nose.
Yeah.
It's these kind of things that make you think.
Well, and I think The Boys is doing a good job of that without just beating you over the head with it.
That's right. Where other shows, they might actually look directly into the camera saying, racism is wrong. Don't be racist.
Right. Exactly. It's not, it's not so obvious. It's not so overt. So, and I think that Boys is handling it pretty well because they're showcasing how a character like Stormfront is a true threat in multiple ways.
Yeah, they're not preaching to you. They're showing you what it represents.
Yeah, let the story tell you as opposed to you trying to tell, what's going on or what the audience should, let the audience figure out what they should believe from the story.
Because your audience isn't dumb, they're like, if they have half a brain, they know what lessons your audience will take from this show. Exactly.
All right. Fourth and final topic, unless you had anything else.
No. I think we're all talked out on that one.
Yeah. Topic number 4, Mother's Milk, Shue and Annie. So it gets a little bit awkward in kind of a Driving Miss Daisy kind of way when these three hit the road. But,
nice, I like that Driving Miss Daisy reference, Charles.
But, it's kind of like Driving Miss Annie a little bit, but it does make also for a very funny moment. And we talked about that where Shue and Annie, even though they've had a strained relationship of late, and they've been a bit estranged, they do find a very fun bonding moment when they're both like singing their hearts out to Billy Joel's, "We Didn't Start the Fire" on the radio.
Yeah,
and all those pop culture references that it goes through, the song cycles through, and poor Mother's Milk has to be like looking over at these two, going like, "White people, I swear."
Yeah, but there are a few things I actually wanted to say. I actually was so happy that on my rewatch, I actually got to rewatch this with Sonia. Yeah. One of her, a few times she was on a break from the hospital, and so we actually got to sit down and watch this together.
All right, yay!
Yeah, no, she got to sit down and watch this because unbeknownst to the listeners out there, my girlfriend is a huge superhero fan herself. I've partly helped stoke those fires when it comes to that, and now she just loves the superheroes. And we watched The Boys together the first time around. She actually joined me for the rewatch, and when we actually watched that moment between Huey and Starlight at the candy machine, I looked at Sonia like, cue sex scene, and there, lo and behold, there it was.
Sure enough, there it was, right?
But yeah, just a little anecdote. But going back to Mother's Milk and that situation, is it just me, or is Mother's Milk more and more a reminder of Jules from Pulp Fiction?
That's a pretty good comparison. I mentioned before that I thought that Mother's Milk had kind of a Zen outlook on life.
He's Luke Cage and Jules put together. That's the way I see it.
I think that's a good comparison. Not just because Mother's Milk's black, but I think it's just the personalities are.
Yeah, because if you think of Jules in Pulp Fiction, Jules is all about cleanliness. He's a little bit OCD himself. And, he kind of
and he wants to walk the earth like Kane in the Kung Fu. Yeah.
That's right. That's why I kind of got a little bit of a, Sam Jackson vibe from him, in particular the Jules character. And, I am admittedly a huge Tarantino fan, so I would go to that. But yeah, even when he talks about the wet wipes, I said, this is Jules. I said, this is something that Jules from Pulp Fiction would do.
Well, and, as we get confirmed by Annie, that he has OCD. So I thought that was interesting that it was a nice little acknowledgement of that. And it makes it, again, it adds a little something to Mother's Milk's character a little bit.
Yeah. And it also shows how perceptive Starlight is when it comes to reading people.
Yeah. Although I do have to wonder now, does Mother's Milk have a wallet that says "Bad Mother Effer"?
I so hope that we might get something like that because,
fingers crossed.
Him and Jules from Pulp Fiction would be best buddies. I'm sure. I could see him hanging out.
So does that make Huey John Travolta?
Yes. It does. It does make him Vincent. It makes him Vincent.
It makes him Vincent Vega.
Yes, it makes him Vincent Vega from Pulp Fiction. And also,
hopefully, he meets a better fate than Vincent did.
Here's hoping.
Dying on the toilet like Elvis did.
Exactly. Yes, and being killed by Bruce Willis. So
spoilers. Yeah. Yes. Sorry, everybody.
But still watch Pulp Fiction. It's a great film regardless. But what I thought was great about it is we talked about Mother's Milk being so parental. Here he's super parental. He's like, you kids, keep it down. It was like,
I'm going to turn this car around.
That's right. I thought to myself, I was like, I'm going to turn this car around. There's not going to be any candy for anyone.
Yeah, it's almost like he's stuck on babysitting duty when he's with Huey and Annie. And, it had to be frustrating because, Mother's Milk, I'm sure, is no fool. That he knows that Huey and Annie still care about each other.
Oh, yes.
Even though they've been estranged or whatnot. And then when they do little, like cutesy couple things, like singing to the same song on the radio and whatnot, he's just probably like over there rolling his eyes at just like, would you two just get a room already?
And he actually points out to
turn on the Barry White and let's get it on already. Or Marvin Gaye.
Marvin Gaye, yeah. But he even points things out even to Starlight when she's eating the donut. He's like, the two of you want to get a room? Because she's kind of like moaning while she's eating the donut.
Yep.
I love that. But and then they share those little going back once again to Tarantino, the dialogue is so Tarantino-esque because they talk about the real, the small stuff. Like my grandpa, went to Baskin Robbins and he'd have everybody in a queue because he wanted to taste everything. So that's, I guess,
she talks about that. They have that little candy bar conversation.
That's why I thought to myself, it's so Tarantino in that sense.
Yeah,
that's probably why my mind went to Jules.
I never made that observation watching the episode, but I think you're absolutely right. I think you're absolutely dead on with that. That it was a very Tarantino, like you could definitely see, maybe it was a direct homage to Tarantino. because the whole idea of Mother's Milk, Huey, and Annie driving out and then stopping somewhere and then having this banal conversation about candy bars and whatnot.
Which is something that Tarantino would be all over, and he's done so many times in his films.
Yeah, and Huey just calling out Annie's bad candy bar choices.
Yeah.
Which I have to agree with, by the way.
You know what? I cannot speak for any of those candy bars because I've not tried one of the mentioned candy bars, Charles.
Yeah.
Those are now on my list. When, God willing, I can visit the good old US of A again, I'm definitely going to be trying these candy bars that were mentioned.
Well, just keep in mind that Huey was right. That Huey, these
are
really bad candy bars, but they can be up. It's up to your personal choice. I know a lot of people they do like Almond Joys, but not them. There are more popular candy bars like Snickers or Kit Kats or Hershey bars, what have you. But
see, that's all stuff that I can get over here. I need to taste the local flavor, so I need to try those Almond Joys and stuff.
Well, you come back over here and we'll hit the grocery store and we'll hook you up with some candy.
Well, recently a friend of mine sent me 3 Musketeers. I fell in love with that.
Yeah, I don't know how the regulations would be on shipping food over to Italy, but I'm sure. I don't think the chocolate bars would survive the trip. Personally.
Well, you know what? They actually have, believe it or not. On a brief parentheses, as I said, my head of PR who lives in Minnesota sent me a care package for my birthday. Just full of jerky and candy and stuff. Like, yay! And she said to me, "I would have liked to have sent you something a little bit more creative." Like, no, this is perfect.
Well, I could see something like Skittles surviving. But
jerky, of course,
or Starburst and jerky was is eternal apparently, but
it's like Twinkies.
Yeah, exactly. But anything like a chocolate bar, I don't think that would last.
It might not travel so well, but as I said, it's
probably be because especially if it was like warm in a place that the package was stored, it might melt everywhere and be messy. So
I actually had some Hershey's things, and what I did was, in fact, as soon as I took them out of the box, I threw them into the fridge because they were a little bit they had been melted by that point.
Yeah. Just everybody, we got to think about the practical side of this, guys. This is important stuff. Obviously, we're talking about.
Yes.
All right. So Annie is, obviously she was coming off of this very traumatic experience with Homelander, and feeling a little vulnerable. She kind of asked if she come along on their mission to track down Liberty. So they end up talking to this African American woman. By the way, she was played by Dawn Lewis. That was Valerie Hunter. That was the character's name. Dawn Lewis, who does a lot of voices on Futurama of late, and also
that's where I recognize.
And also currently on Star Trek Lower Decks.
Okay.
Where she's the captain of the Cerritos.
Ooh, okay.
Highly recommended show, Star Trek Lower Decks. A lot of fun. If you enjoy Rick and Morty and you enjoy Star Trek, you would enjoy this. Trust me.
I have to check it out.
Because it's one of the guys who works on Rick and Morty oversees the show. So it has a very Rick and Morty flavor.
I look forward to I will check it out. I will definitely check it out.
I recommend it. And you don't need to know Star Trek, although there are a lot of Star Trek references in it. But it's worth it. It's worth it, I think. But anyway, so Dawn Lewis is playing Valerie Hunter in this, and Valerie explains to them that when she was 11, she saw this soup named Liberty, and Liberty killed her brother for doing nothing. And keep in mind, Valerie's African American, so obviously here that means her brother was African American, right? So, who do we know that has superpowers and would have a problem with black people just for being black people? Why? Hey, Stormfront, as it turns out.
Yes.
So Valerie's petrified that Liberty might kill her if word got out. And Hugh explains that, nobody's seen Liberty since 1975, but Valerie disagrees and shows him a newspaper article and photo of Stormfront, confirming that the two are the same. And Huey's like, she'd be like 70 now. But Annie brings up the point, anything's possible with Compound V.
Yep, that's right.
So what was your reaction to realizing that Stormfront was Liberty?
Well, it was a shock, and not to mention, coming still from the tragic events of George Floyd and things of this nature. I believe this actually came out before that tragedy occurred.
Yes.
Because they did mention, about how a cop or something putting a foot on somebody's throat.
Yes.
And my mind went obviously immediately to Mr. George Floyd, and what happened to him. And I thought to myself, wow, this show is so far-reaching in the sense they were ahead. They almost predicted the George Floyd thing.
Well, unfortunately, it's not so much that they predicted it. The problem is that there's been so much of that here in the United States. There's been cases where the cops have abused, the black people in their custody, and they tend to end up dead occasionally. And the cops being the cops, and people looking the other way because, hey, we got to support our boys in blue, that the police end up, not being either charged, or if they are charged, they get off, are found not guilty. So justice is never served in those cases. So it's just basically, and then unfortunately this has built up a lot of resentment, as in the case when the George Floyd murder happened. It was just understandably a lot of people saying enough is enough. We're tired of this. This keeps happening over and over and over again. So I don't think it was so much the boys predicting it. It was just the boys discussing it.
Discussing police brutality and what.
Well, discussing it, like how these tragedies keep happening.
Yeah, animosity towards African Americans
in the form of systemic racism. Yeah, and and obviously I don't want to say that all police are like that, because they're not.
No.
But so I want to qualify that. That's very important. But there are corrupt cops, and there are corrupt systems that give these corrupt cops a pass.
I definitely agree. Once again, we don't want to be like Billy Butcher and generalize.
No, we don't.
Because there are definitely good cops who actually do protect and serve, but just as there are corrupt cops.
So what we need to do is support the good cops and then expose the corrupt cops.
Amen to that, for sure. But and that's why I found this particular moment hitting very close to my heart. Obviously our situation when it comes to racism is not obviously as rampant as it is in the US, also because we have a smaller African American community. But having, obviously been exposed to what had been happening in the US and the Black Lives Matter movement and what have you, of course, my mind could not go to the Black Lives Matter, could not have gone to that. So, but
it was again the boys just being representative of the period that we live in right now.
Correct. Yeah. And it just makes you hate Stormfront even more so, because she just kills people because they're different from her.
And we just watched her plow through an entire apartment building. Where,
in the previous episode.
Where, the 59 that they were holding this vigil for earlier in this episode, that, they had been murdered primarily because, Stormfront is racist and didn't like who they were. And so summarily killed them and pinned it on Kimiko's brother, Kenji.
Yeah, it was just as I said, that's why it kind of hit very close to home, if you will, when it came to that moment. And as I said, just your hatred for racism and white supremacism just mounts at this point.
Yeah.
And you're like, I want to see that woman dead at this point, or at least justice. Our good mutual friend Zan Sprouse, I know, is a huge fan of revenge stories and comeuppance stories, and she's mentioned this multiple times on Ghostwood and of course Gold Standard. I am very much in that line of thinking. Is can't wait for the comeuppance.
Yeah, well, I'm a fan of them as well, and I'm a fan of movies like Lady Snowblood or Kill Bill,
Django Unchained, Inglourious Basterds,
exactly.
You name it.
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, I'm all for it. I'm all for it too. I'm a big fan of those as well. Revenge is a great motivator. Let's just put it that way. And film,
correct.
And there's a lot of great cinema to reflect that. All right. So, anything else? I mean, we talked a little bit. Yes, Huey and Annie kind of had long-awaited reunion sex, but ultimately Annie tells Huey, "Well, we can't really do that again because we can't let our guards down."
Yeah,
so again, it becomes that Romeo and Juliet type romance where they're in two different camps, we can't have the feelings that we have for each other because of the people around us.
Yeah, it is the star-crossed lovers for sure.
Yeah, I would say so. So anything else about this episode? I know we had a little bit about Frenchie and Kimiko. There's not that much really that, Frenchie tried to kiss Kimiko. We talked about the possibility of whether that might happen.
And she was not having it, but to briefly mention that moment where Frenchie then, as I said, goes back to his other girlfriend,
Cherie,
if you will.
yeah.
Cherie, yeah. Beautiful woman once again, mind you.
Of course, Frenchie's going to have a girlfriend named Cherie. This deliberately French name, Cherie.
Exactly. I was actually expecting Stevie Wonder's Ma Cherie to kind of play in the background when he got
Cherie, amor, lovely as a summer's day.
I'm glad to see that my fellow co-host Charles Skaggs is a big fan of Stevie Wonder. I appreciate that, Charles.
I love that song. It's a great song. Great song.
But see, once again, he goes there because obviously I suppose there is the pent up hormones and needing to kind of,
the release.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so he gets that. And, I mentioned it earlier, we have that commentary of the woman giving the guy advice on what he has to do next. Mm-hmm. And this is exactly, we get this with Cherie and with Frenchie. So I just wanted to kind of conclude, shall we say, that little arc of,
yes. You see how we brought our episode full circle, everyone?
That's right. See, the circle of life there.
The circle is now complete. Once I was but a learner, now I am the master.
But yeah, so I just wanted to kind of, bring that point to a close where we get that as well, because Cherie also gives some good advice to him as well. She's kind of like, stay in your lane, buddy, mm-hmm. be there for her, but let her kind of be her own person at the same time.
Yeah, I think the vibe I get is that Frenchie and Cherie have this very open, casual relationship. Like, they're able to hook up, but they're not so emotionally attached that it becomes a problem if they see somebody else and have sex with somebody else. But
if Cherie has another man in the house and Frenchie knows about it, he's going to be pissed. Because she actually kind of teases him saying, yep. I might not be alone. And you see he gets super protective and, not protective, very menacing. It's like, I'm going to kill this guy. Who do you have here?
Yeah, guys tend to do that. even when we try to act like, oh yeah, we're cool with an open relationship. We're not cool with an open relationship.
No, that's exactly. It's always the guys who get super jealous about. It's like, open relationship. Yeah. Who do you have here?
Yeah,
because you can see Frenchie immediately gets on the defensive.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, I may not want you around all the time, but I don't want you being around anybody else all the time. So yeah,
I can have multiple partners. You can't.
Yeah. That's basically it. So, see, we're getting very introspective in the male-female relationships.
Well, it is very much
the hetero relationships. Episode. Yeah. All right. So, anything else about this episode that we overlooked?
I don't think so. I mean, we do get a brief thing about the deep, but I don't think it's really sort of.
Yeah, he just basically. It's
not that significant, if you will.
No, it just the church kind of hooks him up with a bunch of women to interview, and essentially what they do is arrange a wife for him, a fake, a show wife.
That's right.
And just for appearance's sake, because they're trying to rehab his image. So hey, he's settled down, he's got himself a wife, so maybe he can get back on the 7.
Yeah. And mind you, and I say this totally unapologetically, I'm a big fan of Ed Sheeran's. There's nothing wrong with liking Ed Sheeran, folks. I wouldn't get a tattoo on my arm of Ed Sheeran, but I am a fan of Ed Sheeran's. I appreciate what he does. I like his work.
Well, he was good in the episode of Game of Thrones. I'm just saying.
Even on The Simpsons too. So I'm cool with Ed Sheeran.
Yeah, we're cool. Yeah, nothing against Ed Sheeran. All right, so favorite quotes. Do you have any favorite quotes of this episode?
I actually had, rather paltry this time because I only got just the one, but which kind of sort of stuck out for me, which was actually Frenchie when he said, "What good does grieving all alone ever do?" I really liked that one. That really stuck out to me, Charles.
That's a very poignant one.
That was my big one, I should say, because I really agree with Frenchie.
I got a few. On that same vein, since we're talking about Frenchie and Cherie, so Cherie says, So, are you going to tell me what? Or are you just going to stain my clean sheets with your sweaty despair?
The dialogue is brilliant.
Yeah. And Mother's Milk and Butcher, where Mother's Milk's talking about Huey, it says, and Huey, and Butcher says, kid's a weeper. Don't want him to get snot on me jacket.
Yeah. And here we finally get Mother's Milk as the leader. We've often said he's the clear leader, and we actually get him to be the leader.
Yeah, because Butcher's off on his own personal mission.
That's right.
So he kind of leaves it up to Mother's Milk to do some digging on, find out what the deal is with Liberty for Grace. All right. Lastly, my last quote is the exchange about candy bars between Huey and Annie. So Huey says, is that an Almond Joy? And Annie's eating it, going, mm-hmm. Huey says, nobody likes Almond Joy. Jeffrey Dahmer. That's it. He's the only one. And Annie replies, this is in my top 3 for sure. And Huey says, what are your other 2? Annie replies, Charleston Chew and Bit-O Honey. And Huey's like, Jesus Christ! Those are like the 3 worst candy bars in the history of candy. That's it. You're sick in the brain.
Well, I love those, but you know what? I'm actually, because I've always wanted to get my hands on the Charleston Chew, because I keep hearing it being mentioned, and I have to try one to see if it's really that bad.
Yeah, Bit-O Honeys, I know, are like, just growing up, those were the Halloween candy that you threw out from your basket. After you going around to all the various houses, because nobody liked Bit-O Honey, they always threw those out.
That was the rubbish candy that you're like, he's such a cheapskate giving me that.
Yeah, it's like you can't afford the Kit Kats.
What's wrong with
the good stuff, so, or Starburst at least. But let's see. So what's your rating for this one?
I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10 candy bars.
Okay. So you thought this was okay, but not the best, not your favorite episode of the season?
You know what? To quote our friend Jesse Jackson, the pacing was a little slow sometimes.
I hope he's listening to this. I hope he is.
I will give Jesse that in this one, because the pace, it was a little bit slow sometimes.
Okay, well, that's okay. But
the dialogue was good, but yeah.
Well, see, I appreciated it because, like you said, it was kind of like a Tarantino episode almost.
Yeah.
I give it a little higher than you. I give it 8.5. And I'm going to give it 8.5 out of 10 Almond Joy candy bars.
Nice.
My backup was going to be Taxi Driver Blu-rays, by the way.
That's a good one, too, because, I love me some Taxi Driver.
Yeah. All right. Phantom Zone news, just really quick. I only have one thing, unless you have something to share. But if you're a fan of the CW series Stargirl, they're doing some casting for Season 2 of this by casting comedian Jim Gaffigan as the voice of Thunderbolt.
Ooh, nice.
So they're setting up Jakeem Thunder, the modern era version of Johnny Thunder.
We look forward to that.
Yeah, so Gaffigan's going to voice the CGI character of Thunderbolt, a magical, electrical, fun-loving, wish-granting pink imp from the mysterious land of Badnesia. And according to the official character description, quote, the wishes Thunderbolt grants often cause more trouble than the wish asker would ever expect. But despite his somewhat constant supernatural disasters, the Thunderbolt's heart is always in the right place, even if it's wounded by the friends he has lost throughout his long existence.
I'm really looking forward to the next season of Stargirl for sure, Charles.
Yeah, so they kind of teased a little bit. If you remember, I don't know, for those who watch Stargirl, the TV series, they teased the Thunderbolt being trapped in this pink pen that Courtney brings back to her house along with a bunch of other Justice Society of America artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
And also they kind of teased that Courtney's brother, Mike, has a friend named Jakeem. They didn't say his last name. So essentially what they're doing is, I think they're going to be setting up Jakeem coming over to Mike's house and playing around with the pink pen. And that'll release the Thunderbolt, and I'm guessing he'll become Jakeem Thunder that we know from the comic books.
I'm definitely crossing fingers and hoping that's the case.
I'd be very surprised if they don't go that route. So we'll see.
I mean, I guess it would be kind of obvious, but, you never know.
You never know. It could be. They could throw us a curveball. So Who
Yep.
knows? Who knows? All right, Phantom Zone fan mail. We do have one quick email from Dave Proctor.
Yay! Hey, Dave.
We always appreciate you writing in, Dave, and glad you're listening to us. Even though we're not a Next Stop Everywhere, we're glad you followed us over here. We definitely appreciate it.
For sure.
So Dave writes in about episode 4, the one we're talking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, my first observation is how hard it is to discuss a single episode of a complete story like in Doctor Who.
True.
So essentially, he's saying that, we're doing episode by episode, it's a little different than, say, discussing a Doctor Who episode, shall we say. Or Doctor Who story.
Yeah, because Doctor Who story kind of has a beginning, middle, and then they're kind of
self-contained. Yeah.
Self-contained, that's the word, yeah.
Yeah. So he adds, one must admire Frenchie for trying to sneak a kiss. It was like trying to pet a tiger. Because as I say, I don't think Kamiko
She did not appreciate
Frenchie.
it.
She did not admire Frenchie at that moment, no. Stormfront putting herself out front, she clearly has an agenda, which, as far as I'm concerned, may be the understatement of the century. Because, yeah. She has an agenda, and it's a very bad one.
That she does.
All right. He adds, Homelander going deeper into his own darkness with a shapeshifter. This is seriously depraved, beyond even his milk obsession.
Thank you, Dave, for bringing that up. I'm not alone in this universe. I appreciate you, sir. Definitely.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say, Dave, that you and Nick are simpatico on this one. You're totally in sync.
For sure. I definitely appreciate you, Dave.
I'm just going to enjoy my glass of milk here. Tasty. All right. I need some cookies to go with that. All right. Starlight nearly killed in an elevator by Homelander. This will cause problems. Yeah? Yes, it will. Also, he has no qualms about torture and death, no matter what the implications.
Mm-hmm.
Black Noir is truly creepy. Oh, yes. And wait till you find out what's underneath that mask of his. I'm just saying.
That's right.
So stay tuned, kids. More Billy Joel. He adds, A-Train out of the 7. There's no telling what he'll be pushed to. He lives for his job.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So he's going to be a little bit more reckless. Frenchie and his sex worker therapy. Everyone needs an outlet. Yep.
That they do.
A good F buddy. Yes, they do. Starlight truly wants to help. That pure drive will be difficult to maintain through the filth of those around her. And that's the key dilemma that she faces as a character.
That is correct, yep.
Yeah, that's her main character arc, I think.
Yeah.
Butcher reunited with his wife. Clearly they do love each other greatly. Well, as you saw by that steamed up back seat. Stormfront riling the crowds into a fear of terrorism, a tactic that is sure to work. Yes, as we've seen, it works far too well.
Yeah. Where have we seen that before?
Where? What kind of rallies? What kind of narcissistic, authoritative, controlling figure would have rallies that stir up hatred and division in the people that he's supposed to represent?
Yeah. I'm at a loss, Charles.
It's a perplexing question, isn't it?
It's quite the conundrum.
Exactly. Quite the poser. Liberty is the key to everything. Having the key doesn't mean you will be happy once you've opened the door. Ooh.
Nice. Well put.
I like that statement. Stormfront and Homelander getting together. Oh no! Yeah, that's the power couple you never want to see happen.
Oh no.
Butcher's wife sending him away. You cannot make a mother abandon her child no matter how miserable. True. At least a good mother. Anyway, I'll add. Huey and Starlight separate. Oh no! That's 2 oh no's from Dave.
I love how vocal he is in his emails.
He is. Exclamation mark and everything. The Deep gains a wife. This church is creepy. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Homelander and Homelander, so he does have a limit to his perversion. Keep up the good work, fellas, and stay well. Thank you, David K. Proctor.
Same to you, Dave. You stay safe.
Yeah, we really appreciate you listening, Dave. We obviously definitely appreciate you writing in because it's great to get some feedback. So if you want to be like Dave, and please do, write to us at phantomzonecast@gmail.com. That's phantomzonecast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, love to read your emails, love to hear your thoughts on the boys. Or you can reach us on Twitter at Phantom Zone Cast on Twitter, Facebook, of course, the Phantom Zone Podcast, or Instagram at Phantom Zone Podcast. And Nick, where can they reach you?
Well, when I'm not having a wonderful time with the great Charles Skaggs, discussing the boys, I do also host Happiness and Darkness, the superhero movie podcast, where we discuss superhero movies from Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, Image, and more. If you'd like to join me there and discuss a superhero movie of your choice, you can hit us up at happinessanddarknesshow@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and the Instagram. And also, we've got Gold Standard, the Oscars podcast, where with Zan Sprouse and Rachel Friend, we're going through all the movies that won the Oscars for Best Picture from 1927's Wings to the present day. And if you'd like to get on the conversation, discuss your favorite Best Picture winner, you can email us at goldstandardoscars@gmail.com. We're on both Facebook and Twitter. We definitely appreciate the support. And what about you, Charles?
Well, Nick, since you were kind enough to set me up there, of course you can reach me on Twitter at Charles Skaggs, or the Instagram at Charles Skaggs, or Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, and my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot. We're talking about all the stuff we talk about here on the Phantom Zone podcast. All kinds of comic book sci-fi news of my other podcasts for Southgate Media Group, including Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast with the aforementioned Zan Sprouse, where we talk all things Twin Peaks, David Lynch, and we just finished up our review of David Lynch's The Elephant Man from the 1980 film. Hope everybody enjoyed it. If you haven't, go check it out, and then come on back, because our next episode, as we do our deep dive into all the great special features on the Criterion Collection Blu-ray release that just came out here a couple months ago. And then Titan Talk the Titans podcast, where Nick and Jesse and I, we talk Titans and Doom Patrol, but that's on hiatus right now as we wait for, hopefully, Titans Season 3 news and Doom Patrol Season 3 news. Yep. So that one's kind of on hiatus. And then Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, where Jesse Jackson, my partner in time, and assorted special guest companions like, hey, DJ Nick and Zan Sprouse and others, join us as we talk Doctor Who, Torchwood, the Sarah Jane Adventures, Big Finish Audios, and more.
And I do know that, sorry to interrupt you there, Charles, but I do know that apparently also Rachel wants to come back on Next Stop Everywhere, so I hope we can get her back on Next Stop Everywhere for sure.
Yes, please. And everybody stay tuned, because according to my Next Stop Everywhere schedule, a certain DJ Nick is scheduled to return to the TARDIS here. Let's see, that would be next week, as we going to be talking some Christopher Eccleston.
Yay!
When we talk Aliens of London and World War III.
Yes, indeedy.
So hopefully Nick's still has that on his schedule, so we can do that, because I think it would be a lot of fun.
I sure do.
So everybody stay tuned for that. And then in the meantime, though, come on back next week for episode 195. We talk We Gotta Go Now, the 5th episode of The Boys Season 2, sung, obviously We Gotta Go Now, I've referenced to the song Louie Louie by the Kingsmen.
Yep.
So great lyric from that. And we'll see what happens as, well, hey, Homelander and Stormfront start to get a little closer together. And we'll see how Homelander's descent into madness continues.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, if you think you've seen Macbeth, this is Macbeth on steroids.
Pretty much. So, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Nick, thank you. Had a ball as always. Well, and as Nick bows in assent here.
Yes.
Like a very Ed McMahon on the Johnny Carson show a little bit. So, everybody, thanks again, and please come back. We'll see you next time, episode 195. We got to go now. So, here at the Phantom Zone, we got to go now, and we'll see you next time right here on the Phantom Zone podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Ciao.